I was 10 years old when I first rode on this boat, taking in the sights on the River Thames with my young architectural mind loving every second, when the tour guide said, "To the right, you'll see the National Theatre, the ugliest building on the Thames." King Charles went even further to say that it was a clever way of being able to build a nuclear power station in the middle of London without anyone objecting. But I was immediately drawn to it as soon as I saw it. It was old but futuristic. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. That was my introduction to brutalism. So where did all this concrete come from? And how did we get from this to this? I'm Reece. I love building, and you should too. So let's go and explore the delights of London's built environment together. So buckle up, it's about to get brutal. Now you may think the name comes from its brutal design nature, but it in fact comes from the French term béton brut, which is French for raw concrete. It wasn't so much of an architectural movement, but more of a way of describing the style of exposed concrete and towering forms. It became popular in the 1950s and blazed through the next 20 years as a reaction to modernism. Architects were tired of the factory-like structures that were made of glass and steel and wanted to try something new. Think of brutalism as modernism's cousin, but cooler, younger, and grumpier. With the devastation of wartime bombing and mass urban migration, brutalism was waiting in the wings. In 1955, architectural critic Rainer Banham published his article, The New Brutalism. That's a lot of words, but he basically said there are 3 ways to define a brutalist building. Memorability as an image, the ability to recognize something as a brutalist building. Clear exhibition of structure, being able to see how the building was built. Materiality is found, being able to see what the building is made of. 3 years prior to this article, Le Corbusier, often described as the father of modernism, designed the Unité de Habitation, a building so stark in contrast to the local architecture of Marseille that the locals described it as La Maison de Fada, or the Madhouse. Architectural historians would simply call it the first brutalist building. Architecture in the UK before World War II was incredibly ornate and usually inspired by classicism made of stone and brick. But when the war was over, a new system needed to be devised. Something a little bit more brutal. Alison and Peter Smithson, inspired by Le Corbusier's concrete behemoth, brought back a new sort of stripped-back modernism, which got us buildings like this one. The 50s were a time of abstract art, jazz, and rock and roll. These movements, similarly to brutalism, were positioning themselves against the ornamentation of the 19th century, trying to find beauty in the austere. The Barbican is arguably London's most unique and ambitious brutalist project. The architects Chamberlain, Power and Bond were given a site that was nearly completely flattened in World War II, and they aimed to design a city within a city. Across London, brutalism was used as a tool to fill in the gaps where wartime bombing had occurred. This building here, the Royal College of Physicians, designed by Sir Denis Lasdun, who also designed the National Theatre, was commissioned to do just that. It is one of only 113 buildings completed in the 20th century that have since been Grade 1 listed. Landmark listings like this prove that it's not only buildings like Big Ben and St Paul's Cathedral that need to be conserved. Brutalism is a movement that deserves to be remembered. Maybe the tour guide was wrong all along. Just up the road at the London Zoo stands another incredible Grade 1 listed structure. It's the Penguin Pool, designed by Bertolt Lebutkin in the 1930s. It's a retro-futurist masterpiece and I absolutely love it. Can you believe it's 100 years old? But if we venture away from the Antarctic and head over to the elephant enclosure, you will find an underrated brutalist theatrical masterpiece. It was designed by Hugh Casson, creating a new iteration of zoo enclosure after the classicism of the giraffe house and the retro-futurism of the penguin pool. Talk about chalk and cheese. Even though the elephants have now moved out of London Zoo, at the time of its completion it was hailed as a huge success for its design and was described as marvellously expressive of its inhabitant. The materiality of the concrete is meant to resemble the rough hide of an elephant's backside and is actually strong enough to withstand them rubbing against it. Now, of course, the intended inhabitants of most brutalist structures weren't elephants, they were, in fact, humans. And Erno Goldfinger, the designer of Balfron Tower, here in Poplar, East London, wanted it to be the shining beacon of brutalist housing. Local families were rehoused into the tower by Street in an attempt to make it as social as possible and retain the fabric of community within his Streets in the Sky concept with walkways connecting the different flats. In 1996, the building was Grade 2 listed, and then later it was sold and renovated in 2011. This shift from public to private ownership pushed out Goldfinger's original intended tenant, and wealthy buyers moved in. Unfortunately, like so many social housing schemes, gentrification had taken its toll. Although there was only 5 years between their completion, Robin Hood Gardens by Alison and Peter Smithson has met a very different fate. Opening in 1972, like Balfron Tower, Robin Hood Gardens featured elevated walkways to create a sense of community between the flats. A grassy hill between the two buildings was a space for children to play and for families to meet. Despite campaigns by residents, housing groups and architects to preserve the building, its demolition started in 2017. By the 1980s, the novelty of brutalist architecture had worn off. Many of the buildings were in disrepair, and governments were very reluctant to spend money on social housing. Brutalism became seen as this cold, unemotional, uninspiring, imposing lump of concrete in the city. The original design of the Unité de Habitation had a rooftop pool, an in-house school. It was meant to embody a new future for everyone. This has been somewhat lost in translation over the last 50 years. Ultimately, water was the downfall of brutalism, aging and destroying the concrete, hauling on flat roofs and staining the facades at an extreme rate. When a building is more or less one hunk of concrete, it's a very expensive task to revive them when they're falling apart. The buildings designed by Le Corbusier for the climates of southern France didn't fare so well in London's notoriously bad weather. Brutalism was so short in its existence, it would feel almost like a dream if the buildings weren't here to confirm that it was real. Architecture at the cutting edge of its style has always been questioned by traditionalists. Gothic architecture was despised by the Roman Renaissance writers that named it. They named it after the Goths who destroyed the Roman Empire. Now, Gothic churches are loved throughout the world. Will brutalism be having a similar revival of opinions? Films like Dune and Blade Runner 2049 use brutalism as a backdrop to show the future of humanity, whereas on the other hand, Balfron Tower is used in 28 Days Later to show the zombie apocalypse. Not quite as glamorous. So, do you go crazy for concrete? Are you a brutalist babe like me? Or are you a high-rise hater? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Are you rolling? Yeah. Oh my God. Is this pose okay? How's it look? Does it look a bit too nonchalant? We're here, live, finding the beauty in the austere. Flying in the crow's nest, over. Oh, I'm out of breath. The 50s were a time of jazz. That's it. But if we venture away from Antarctica and towards the it's a retro-futurist masterpiece. Spider, sorry. I've got, let me cook. So, with the, no. Hi. Hey, girl. Sun's out. Roll the cameras.
This is a wall.
Hiya. Howdy. No. No. Sorry. I thought they'd be a bit more sturdy. It's made of concrete.